Yep.
Awesome. So we're here. How are you?
Excellent. Great to be here. Thanks so much, Mel, for inviting me to your wonderful, calm, healing group, Facebook group.
No, it's been awesome. So the way you've been received, I know that, a few people have loved it. So it's good to have your expertise. I mean, I know working with you myself, it's been awesome to have you in there. And it's nice to be back in your office, I guess, as close as I can be at the moment to see you in your office. It's
yeah, great to have the synergy. I mean, I treated you as a patient a while back, but I think we had a chat more recently and realised it was Tantra and Reiki and life coaching, and I had no idea you're doing all that. So they're all dear areas to me as well. So I thought, wow, meeting someone like you on the Central Coast, wow, what a gold mine.
And the same, and I had no idea when I was booking in with you as well that you were into Tantra, had been to Ashrams and done all this cool spiritual healing yourself. So it was it was really awesome to find someone like you.
I purposely hid all that behind a conservative, allied health front, to touch with my background, which we'll go into, was very esoteric. And then I thought, wow, I've got to touch more people rather than just buy the converted for the converted. And that's what got me into the chiroosteo.
Yeah, well, it's a good lead in, I guess. People come to you for pain and then you give them that, help them with that, but then you help them with all this other stuff as well. So. Well,
it depends where they're at, because it's I'm very vibrational and very much into feeling into people, whether they give me permission, not verbal permission, but energetic permission. Some people are just naturally open, and what I love is quite often there's a really intuitive charge that comes through me, which I have a great respect for. It's not me, it's coming from somewhere else. And so when that happens, it's really obvious. And so there's this whole opening in me in response to the person. So all this insight comes out only because energetically they give me the permission. But most people, because I'm a chiropractor, osteopath, most people come in just for, ugh, caveman, cave woman, ugh, neck pain, ugh. Not V for victory, but 2 visits. 2 visits. And then I'm going to play what I call the human pinball game, where they just bounce around from one practitioner to another trying to get the magic 2 visits. And that's really comprised a big part of my practice. And that's really, I guess, why we're chatting, that I don't fit that mold.
Yeah, no. So who's Gerry? What makes Gerry Gerry? And I guess, what do you do?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting because, I come from a very interesting background. My mother got into yoga and meditation when I was 13. So originally at 13, I was reading Autobiography of a Yogi, Science of Breath by Joseph Fleming, and Brahma Sharakas. A lot of these, really got introduced to all that at 13, and then met my guru, Indian guru, at 19 in Melbourne. I was fortunate enough to be living in Melbourne in the 70s, and that was the most remarkable time, the 70s. I mean, when you look at people like Reggie Ray, Pema Chodron, these are American giants of Tibetan Buddhism. They all met their teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in about 1970. So it was around the early 70s to mid 70s in Australia and America. It was an exceptional time. So unfortunately, I was a teenager in that time in Melbourne. So originally, a lot of my friends and my surroundings were with all Sri Chinmoy. There's a whole list. Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupada, founder of the Hare Krishnas. They all had their centres in Melbourne in the 70s. Goes on and on. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and of course my teacher was Muktananda, Guru Maharaji. They're all just around the corner where I was living. So there was an extraordinary time to be living. And then, so that was probably the pivotal point in my life. Up until then, I was just eating junk food, going to pubs with my mates, and very disenchanted with my life, quite frankly. And then met this extraordinary guy. Back then it was obviously 1974, pre-computers, obviously. And that was just, he would come out from India and do these incredible complete packed house, town halls in the various suburbs in Melbourne, which is truly extraordinary now when you think of it, because that was pre-social media. You wonder, that was just through the grapevine. And he'd only been to Australia once before, 4 years earlier, so word must have got out. And I'll never forget that. I still get a buzz thinking about it when you have that the true, authentic chanting with an incredibly insightful Indian teacher who'd had 25 years wandering around India, and so then didn't come out to the West till he was in his 60s. So that really pivoted my whole life. It was never the same. I literally gave up on my junk food, got into vegetarian, what's called sattvic diet, got into all the Indian chanting, and within a year I was in India, staying at his ashram, and also the ashram of Ramana Maharshi in Tiruvannamalai, just south of, back then it was Madras, now Chennai. And then I went back 2 times after that, when I was 20, 21, 22. So that really impacted my life to the extent that I'm here today because of that. Because in 1978, there was an American guy called Nala Raj, who was a teacher at the Polarity Health Institute. At that stage it was Mount Shasta in North California. They moved it to San Juan Islands, just south of the Canadian border, Pacific Northwest, just north of Seattle. And a year later, I was there because of Nala Raj. It was the first time I was 23 and experienced this chakra balancing, was just life transforming. And literally a year later, I did the training at his institute.
Wow.
And that introduced me to the body work. That was 1979, 41 years ago now. And that really put me on the path that I am now. So it's literally a 4-decade path based on my time in India.
Wow. Wow. So it seems to happen really fast, like from when you first, like you were reading the books and stuff that your mum got you onto, but would you say it sort of happened really fast from the first, I guess, external experience outside the home to actually traveling to India?
Yeah, well, I think, I was lucky because my father was supporting me financially so I could go over to India a number of times. So I didn't have any reservation that way. So at 19, there was a whole community of Muktananda's devotees in Melbourne. And they kept going forward and back to when he was in America and in India. So it was an obvious step. But really what took me to India the first time was as a teenager. I would have been about 18, 17, 18. And I was reading the Ramakrishna and his disciples. I think it was by Christopher Isherwood. And then also I got introduced to Ramana Maharshi, who was a remarkable story. I mean, that's truly remarkable. He was in Tiruvannamalai, so I was reading his books that I had this incredible instant resonance reading Ramana, that this is pure gold. Like there was such a direct lineage through his books. And I experienced that also with Eckhart Tolle, reading his books. There was a sense in inner knowing that this guy's coming from source. And also Autobiography of a Yogi. I encourage all my listeners to read that book because that took Yogananda about 5 years to write. And his energy is absolutely imbued in those pages. So you get experience in far, far more than just the book. So that's what took me to India, primarily to go to Ramana Maharshi's ashram. And I was hoping to stay there for some months, but after 10 days, they said, sorry, we don't cater for Westerners here.
Wow.
I'm in India now, where else to go but Muktananda's ashram. And at that stage, he was in America. So it was a very skeleton staff, very austere, just a few Westerners up at 3 a.m., bit of chapati and milk for breakfast, 6 hours chanting on marble floors. Very, very austere.
What an experience.
But that's what introduced me to the potency of which impacts me literally to this day on the importance, which I suggest to all the listeners for a one take home, is the regularity of practice. There's nothing like it. The build up, of doing regularity of practice in one location, because I was sitting in his ashram. You know, for instance, the 2 p.m. chant, I'll never forget this. And I'd get there a little bit early, and you'd wait for literally the 2 p.m. chime of the clock, and then the Sanskrit chant would start, and you knew that had been going on 365 days of the year for, who knows, 10, 15 years in that one area. And the build-up was extraordinary. So that really pivoted my point of life around, look, the importance of regular practice based on that experience.
Wow. So from all that experience that you just spoke about, and I guess bringing that into what you do, into your chiropractor, osteo, moving with longevity, into your work with your clients, what's your why? Like, what makes you, I guess, channel all this work into helping somebody? What's your purpose?
In one word, transformation. And so that's the enormous challenge that I have, because I have what's called a message to market mismatch. So I'm realizing years later that using the label osteopathy and chiropractic, the global surveys is ugh, neck pain, 2 visits. And that's the concept of it. And I haven't been able to switch that in 30 years practice. So that's why I'm now having the label moving for longevity and targeting 55 to 65 year olds, because I'm 64 now myself. So I'm wanting to target specifically people that are feeling the edge, that they're coming up to 60s or just turned 60s and feeling like, wow, I'm starting to feel the effects of aging. The reality is my youth is behind me. I really want to make my future decades the most productive. And that's really based professionally on seeing a lot of people in their 70s come in, even late 60s, unfortunately, coming in that haven't exercised. Because my specialty is movement, breath, and being a yoga teacher for 36 years. So it's my whole thing is to make sure people don't get to that stage. So that's my mission, my why. It's a very passionate saying, look, we've got to make sure people don't end up what I call Beatles, which is, my time here. I was brought up with the Beatles, but this is not singing Beatles. If you see Beatles on their back, when they get on their back, they spin around and can't flip over. Well, I get these people coming in on my table. They can't get down, and they certainly can't get up. And they, Gerry, can you give me a lift? They give me that.
So to someone sitting at home resonating with this, would you say it's not too late?
Look, it's never too late as long as you're breathing. And I'm a massive follower of Deepak Chopra and also latest psychoneuroimmunology, which is the power of, what the emotions, neurotransmitters, and the way they get picked up on neuroreceptors sites on every cell in the body. So there's this incredible evidence-based proven now. Candace Pert was an extraordinary lady who proved all this, probably 30 years ago now. So it's never too late metaphysically. However, having said that, my passion is to get people in that age group, like mid to late 50s, who feel the urgency, feel it's time, and work with them to make sure they don't end up like that. Because you can improve people, but wow, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
really is. I mean, I'm very multidimensional by personality, but it's like the analogy I use is like bringing in a Maserati, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Rolls Royce, which is our bodies. And you come into a car mechanic. I'm just a spinal body mechanic. And you come into a car mechanic, hasn't been serviced for 20 years. And you have a quick look, spark plugs are plugged with carbon. The air filter, fuel filter, oil filter, all clogged up. And it's backfiring. And people bang, bang, driving their cars into your garage and say, look, can you tune me up? Well, hang on, it's not that easy. We've got to actually do a whole resurfacing. Well, it's the same with the body. So my whole thing, dating back to my time in Muktananda's ashram, Ganeshpuri, outside of Mumbai, is, the regular practice through your whole life. And if you have let it go, then that's okay. But, you know, you don't want to leave it till your 70s. You really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Come back to it. Mm.
Yeah.
So what's been Gerry's biggest lesson in life?
Well, look, on an emotional level, look, you can talk left brain conceptual, left brain analytical, but I always look at the emotional side. And probably the main pivotal point in my life, which has put me on the path for my fascination with Tantra, and, you're into that as well, was my mother, back in the 50s, it was a different era. I mean, you obviously, respectfully, you wouldn't even know, but you talk to guys of my vintage, it's when women stayed at home and men owned their wives through financial control. And I was brought up in that era. And so my mother was very unhappy in that tight mold. And so literally when I was 13, that was probably about 67, I think. She literally said, back then I was called Gerald, tap on the head, Gerald, darling, you're old enough to look after yourself. I'm leaving. I'm off to England.
Wow.
I'm taking your younger brother and sister. And I was very close to her, and I got all my interest in healing and osteopathy and everything from her. And I'm into the spiritual path because of her, not my father. She got into spirituality, got me into it. She got me going to osteopaths at 8 years of age. She got me going into yoga when I was 10. And so she said, Gerald, darling, and you're going off to boarding school. And that was the end of my family life. So that really was shattering, to say the least. Like talk about a heart wound that I might take on it as you never recover from that. It's just how I adapt to it. So that whole thing put me onto what is women, because she was not appreciated. My father and two brothers, four males. My two brothers and myself, my father, and she was never acknowledged her femininity, or, I knew that as a 10-year-old. So it put me on a path to, what is the feminine, what is the masculine, what are women's needs like? Because it put me on a whole healing journey, as you could imagine, of abandonment, rejection, literally hating her for 10 years, literally. And obviously not having relationships during my teens because of it. But it wasn't until I went to the Polarity Institute, which I've got to thank my mother for going to Muktananda, then going to Ganeshpuri, meeting Nala Raj, then going to the Polarity Institute. And this is a most remarkable guy, which in fact, it's disrespectful to call him a guy. He was a remarkable man. You really want to, all your listeners, Google Dr. Randolph Stone, who was a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, but also a devotee of of the Great Master. Now, the Great Master comes from a lineage of Radhaswami Satsang Beas, is a city in the Punjab. And it's a Radhaswami path, which is the path of the Naam, the sound. And so Randolph Stone was a devotee of the Great Master. And so a deeply, deeply spiritual man. And so I was fortunate enough to go to the Polarity Institute, which was set up by a number of his students that studied with him. He was already in his 80s and had retired by the time I went to the States in 79. He was in the California, probably mid-70s. He'd been running his own private practice for about 30 odd years in Chicago. But he had an incredible insight of the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, and the chakras and how it all relates into the body. And that put me on a total path of that holistic body work.
Beautiful.
So that's really introduced me to the yin and the yang. And then the other two big mentors around that, which we had a discussion before, was David Deida, D-E-I-D-A. So I recommend the listeners Google David Deida, D-E-I-D-A. Now he's 100%. A world master of creating relationships. He talks about 3-stage relationships.
Mm.
codependency,
Yeah.
and then the 50-50, and then the third stage. So this is not the place to go into David did a rave, but I was fortunate enough to do a lot of training with him 20 years ago now, in 2000. And that was another pivotal point in my life. He was an extraordinary guy on the understanding of the shadow, the light, and the dark, and really being extremely transparent with people coming out. I mean, it was in Byron Bay, Mullumbimby, so you had a very, very unique client base there, participants that were very open anyway. And so you had men and women under David's supervision really exposing themselves and what their needs were, and a lot of practice around men being present and conscious for women, and women being in their love and radiance. That was remarkable stuff.
Awesome. So what a gift. Like I guess I asked you what the lesson was, but I always like to, when there's a lesson, it's what's the gift in that? What's the blessing?
Well, look,
and it's like you've been put onto such a beautiful path from that.
Well, I'm stating the obvious. The most learning comes from the most suffering. And I've found with my own personal development and psychotherapy I've done is that when a person like myself is at the point of humility, has suffered enough, is in bent knees and starts crying out, that's when the opening happens. And I was probably at that stage at 2000, I would have been 45, I think. And I realized for a number of years that, look, my life isn't working. How is it that a guy like me can be so into yoga, have gone to India 4 times, had hung out with some ecstatic beings and been in their Mahasamadhi shrines and sacred sites, and my life clearly wasn't working. And I was really perplexed by that. And then I went to David Dieter's 10-day, and he's a gentleman that really embodies the masculine, the feminine, the chakras. You got to experience him. You get an inkling in his audio, but being with him physically is extraordinary. So I would go through a whole energy, buzzes and fuses and energy, major energetic shifts being in his presence, showing you the potency of what he was like. He talked about the Shiva and Shakti scales, about the love and light, and all the grades down to the killer, the rage, the absolute killer. And my whole spine and body just fused. I said, now I know. I've just been to India with this, love, and I could feel the, all the, there was just such disparity between what Mukta Nanda would teach and what went on in the ashram amongst the devotees, and that backstabbing and all that personality stuff. And that really lit the whole thing up. I thought, oh my God, of course. And then that put me on the path of 2 years of core energetics, which was body-orientated psychotherapy. And that's led me on to Reggie Ray, which I suggest the listeners also Google Reggie Ray, a most remarkable American scholar who's trained with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who his thing is somatic meditation. So I'm really he's inspired me enormously more recently. So I'm wanting to bring back somatic training more and more into what I do, because I think, it's that's really my passion now, is to combine my early spirituality. I mean, I've been in a very unique situation. When I've been listening to some podcasts by Reggie, his claim to fame, and I don't say that in any belittling Pollyanna way, is like, I was with Chogyam Trungpa when he came out in 1970. So, guess what? I was in that same era. So I've had the unique privilege of being around gurus in India around the 70s, which was a unique time on the planet. It really was. And so I'm getting a calling to bring that back in to the polarity, which is all around polarity therapy, which is all around, the whole body-orientated psychotherapy, chakra integration, and combined with Reggie's somatic meditation. That's really would give me meaning. Because at the moment, just getting people out of physical pain is really not my true calling.
Wow. Beautiful. So I guess from that, what are your strengths? What would you say are your main key strengths? So that
I think, so look, there are many levels of looking at strengths, but on a superficial one, I would say my strength is connectivity, connecting. So I've never been a great one for initiating and running roaring practices and having a group of raving fans. I mean, your Facebook group, I'm in awe of. It jumps every time I look at it, Mel. It's like it's exponentially jump. I come from a so that my weaknesses and strengths you can't delineate either. Strengths only are in relation to weaknesses, and really, I come from a very yang masculated, because my feminine was literally ripped out. I didn't have any nurturing role modeling, so I'm a very solo, masculated guy, and so it comes across. I'm very clinical, I'm very direct. I've done a lot of Earhart seminar trainings back in the 80s. I've done a lot of personal development. So I ruthlessly stand for personal transformation. And also being to the States 3 times in 12 months back in 79, hanging out with these amazing Americans, not all Americans, but in that healing community that really knew, well, I'm at A, I want to go to B, they just go, they don't have any procrastination. Super clear what they're on about, and are remarkably direct and open. And that just doesn't happen in our culture. So I have this directness, which I picked up when I was 23, and it made a massive life impact on my, character structure. So my strengths are connecting and interconnecting, and that's what I want to be running, global programs and connecting with collaborating people and connecting people. I'm a brilliant networker. I'm a Gemini. I'm an air sign. So air is all about connecting. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so it's all about communication. So I'm a very good communicator. But my weakness is not people skills. So really, if I was to really run a program, I would have to, by necessity, team up with someone like Mel.
Here we are.
Because I have enormous certain skills, but that lovely flowing people skill, I would have to have someone up front. Then I would be behind in the engine room.
You've got such wealth of knowledge. It's just like, I feel like it's sort of mining for opals and pulling the gems out of you and pulling all the,
part of that, not to be egotistical, but part of that is, this path started at 13, and in earnest when I was 19, went to India, and then professionally 79, 41 years ago. That's been my path. I taught massage and polarity energy balancing all around Australia in the early 80s. And then I started my osteochiro in 84 and graduated in 88, 32 years ago. So it's been a lifelong journey, but not just, not just the musculoskeletal side. It's been doing personal development vigorously and fire walks and psychotherapy and David Dieter's work. And I'm still doing it. Still book into this day. Still love jumping in the fire. And or if you get close to people on fire, you get burnt. Well, I love being burnt. I really do. And so that's going to be a trait that's just me.
I can relate. Yeah.
In terms of pulling gems out, I guess it's talking to someone who's been on that consistent journey for that amount of time. Then there's been, and also quite frankly, being personal, not being married or having kids. So, which you'd appreciate. The amount of time and energy that takes. Well, I haven't had that. So I've been able to literally do anything, go anywhere, and I've used that time frame to travel the world and extensively go to ashrams all around India and in the States and Findhorn 4 times. A credible community in Scotland. So I've done a lot of stuff which I could never have done if I had young kids. Just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, you used your time well.
I still am.
Yeah, definitely. So what, out of everything, all the ashrams where you've learned all the stuff, all the chakra work, tantra, chiropractic, meditating, all the stuff that you've done, what would you say are your favorite practices that enhance your life?
Well, you know, I've pretty much alluded to it, you know, after literally decades of upper chakra, Om Namah Shivaya, and, you know, following it with no disrespect at all, the Hindu path, which I found is very futuristic,
Yeah.
disembodied. It's now being very influenced by Reggie Ray, which is around which ties into everything I've been doing. I mean, it's just a complete interconnection of the favourite practice now I've got is every morning I live on the Budgewoi Lake, and I literally have been influenced by, you know, many, you know, Edward Bach flower remedies, walking on the dew, and even Randolph Stone, he talked about the importance of connecting with the dew and the moisture. So I barefoot every morning and walk on grass, have the lake, you know, that's why I put that little Facebook Live on your group. That's not me doing a one-off, that's every morning. So it's tying in with the rituals that I learned when I was 20 in India, you know, on those marble floors in Muktananda's ashram, and tying in with Reggie's somatic meditation, and also tying it in with Eckhart Tolle, which his whole thing, well, certainly my take away from him, because everyone's going to take their own takeaway. My takeaway is the inner energy body, how to be in the now, is to hang out with nature. Because nature is in the now. So if I can go walking with the greenery and walking with that somatic heel to toe and the breathing, breath work, and connecting with nature, that's it.
Yeah, ultimate.
It is, because some of my greatest openings, and it's been a while, you know, I'm very transparent. I wish it would happen every time I went to nature, but I've had some remarkable intuitive openings. And I say that with utter honor and respect, that when it moves through me, I know it's like something's moving through me. This is not me. And it's happened like, I lived on the Gold Coast for 5 years, and I used to go down to Byron Bay. And so there was some I had 3 power spots where I had these incredible openings. And one was the full moon, the Byron Bay lighthouse. I'd be up there on my own on a full moon and watching so just on a full cloudless night, like just psychic openings. There's another one up at the Bellbird Lookout at Binnaburra. That's just the back of the hinterland of the Gold Coast. And then there was also another one which had some remarkable, there was like a private property up the Tullabudra Valley. I had the good fortune of knowing Thomas, who makes these, the moon astrology charts, which he's doing them for like 30 years. And his property is totally private, but runs up in this incredible like atrium of sanctity of green little rivers. And it's just the earth devas are like jumping at you. Hello, Mel. Hello. I am a nature diva. Nice to meet you. So it's that strong there. And so I've had a couple of, one instance in particular, which would have been about 20 years ago, which was just frightening. Because, you know, I've been around some remarkable teachers, like, you know, whatever, you know, we can talk about that some other time, but true saints with millions of followers in India, hanging out with them for 4 months on the Ganges. That's Ananda Moyma. If people want to know who she is, you can go into Autobiography of a Yogi, look at the chapter on the bliss-permeated mother. That was 1936. When Yogananda went back to India, called by his guru, if you want to see me, come back now. So he was in America for about 20 years at that stage, went back. And so there's a whole chapter on the mother. Well, I had 4 months with her in Haridwar, seeing her daily. So I've really been around some amazing people. So what happened on this day in this atrium, and the other reason why I'm saying this is that this is what nature does to me, is I had this insight of like relating these teachings to nature. And I was listening to this coming out, and I was listening to it like from detachment and thinking, this is as good as I've heard from anyone. This is like pure essence coming from me. Wow. So, and it was so by being in these still points, which is what Eckhart's talking about, by getting into nature, it automatically brings us to that still point. And referring back to Randolph Stone, he talks about the three gunas, Raja, Tamas, and Sattva. And the Hindus would say Tattva. They don't say the Tattva. So the Sattva is the middle. So when you get the Raja, Tamas, the yin and the yang balanced in the central Sushumna channel, that's the Sattva. That's the soul. The soul wants to just emerge. And it can't if you're zipping from one Raja, Tamas, negative, positive. You can't do it. So in that deep peace that I have, that enormous connection with nature, then this, I would say, amritza, ambrosia, nectar started just emerging. And I knew from my practices, this is like pure. Like I was listening to it thinking, wow, thank you. This is amazing teaching. And where was it coming up from? None other than myself. So I think we all have this inside of ourselves. It's just a matter of reaching the still point. And one of the easiest ways for me in the practice I'll be doing is showing people how to connect into their bodies. It's the greatest gift we've got, I think, to actually to be embodied in our body.
Completely. Yeah, completely. So what's your number one tip? So for people out there, they want to create a life that they love, what would be your number one tip to them?
I've just said it. I think number one, well, it combines, they're all the same. The daily practice, and this is something completely alien to our modern culture, because it's all about fast and easy. We're all ADD. We've all got social media, which is all unfortunately left brain, splitting us off from our bodies, getting into our heads. So the concept of regularity is very Eastern. The idea of practicing, of being with a teacher for 40 years, it's completely alien. It's all just, black belt in 12 months. So, getting blasted on Facebook. So it's a matter of the regularity, lifelong. I keep telling all my patients, these are going to be wonderful exercises, but guess what? Do them lifelong. No one does it lifelong, I can tell you professionally. Everyone gets shown exercise. They do it when they're in pain, stop when they're out of pain. And when they're in pain again, they get started. So the regularity and the regularity of being into their bodies, and that we could do another whole, Zoom or a practice or a combined, where it's all self-isolation, but I'd love to do some embodiment practice of just being in our bodies. And that's critical, because I know this stuff's from my journey. This isn't reading Reggie respectfully and loving him and saying, get into your body. This was like from 20 to 40, about 25 years. I saw David when I was 45 and I went to Muktananda and wrote, that's a long time. That's 25 years I was in disembodied Hindu practice, and it wasn't working for me. And only till I got Robert Kirby, Core Energetics, and David Dieter and Reggie Ray to get back into my body and acknowledge my shadow. Did I get the aha moment? Now I know why my life isn't working. Of course, it's all upper chakra. How can that possibly work? Can't. It's only half the picture.
Yeah. Beautiful. I can relate to that, because many years, I haven't had the 40 years experience that you have, but I know since I've been on this journey, I used to discount my body, and it wasn't until I fully realized, and I guess my body spoke to me, it started creating all this pain for me, and it started to, some of that I've shared with you before as well in past sessions and teachings. And it wasn't until I started to learn to be in my body and to be aware of my body that, it makes significant changes in your life. Yeah. When you start to listen and to honor and respect. Yeah,
but part of my journey has been a fascination one too, because it's just been so long. I got into yoga in the 60s in Melbourne. That's over 50 years ago. That was early days in Australia. I'm telling you, there were about 2 yoga studios, Margaret Sedgman, in Melbourne. My mother took me in as like an 8 or 9-year-old. So I really know the way, yoga. And the problem with, I can still do practice, gym, yoga, and still be disembodied. there's a certain intention of being in my body. And Reggie has some wonderful, I should put this in as a resource, some free podcasts on 10-point meditation. So he gets you meditating into your feet, your big toe, your toe. So you're bringing your awareness. That's why I'm into that heel to toe, being aware of body, foot contact, sensation of the dew. And Robert Kirby, this wonderful core energetics practitioner, I'd go through this incredible beating pillows and wooden swords and just like crazy stuff. Just to, psychotherapeutic process. And he'd say, okay, now think of your mother. Oh yeah, I've all, I love my mother. Yeah. So now say feet, boom. The muscle test would blow out. Or no, he'd say legs, actually. He'd say, I remember that. He'd say 20 years ago, he'd say legs, boom, it blew out. So it's a matter of bringing your intention, your awareness and your consciousness into your feet. And I remember at the Polarity Institute, we'd have the bipolar roller. I mean, you guys, you really want to go and Google Randolph Stone and all his books. I had to get them imported from America. Now they're all online. They'll cost a fortune from America. Now they're all online. And he had this bipolar current from head to toe. So the feet are the negative pole to the brain. And there's so much anxiety and like so much of our problems now are this overstimulated positive pole, the brain. This social media is just firing it.
Yeah.
And so we used to stand on this rod. We'd stand up on this box and this rod, and a second person would crank this thing. It was like a tire lever, and it would roll into your feet, like this hard steel roller would roll into your feet. Holy crap. Bang, your head would explode. The energy would run down to your feet. And I still to this day love walking on pebbles and stones. And I still get a rush to this day when I walk on, in bare feet and I hit some little pine cones or something. Oh, rather than saying, oh, I'm saying, oh, wonderful. Brings me out of my head into my feet. That's the practice.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It is very cool. Because, with social media, Mel, all this Facebook garbage, it's all left brain. And it's further disconnecting us from our bodies and further disconnecting us from our hearts. And, all this type of stuff from a chiropractic point of view, you're all head is at a 45-degree angle. So the whole, it's just, impregnating the chi, the prana into your head and cutting us off from our heart, connecting with people. It's actually, there's a lot of negative with this whole IT social media, a lot of negative from an old guy like me that, lived my whole life without it.
Yeah. Well, what my yoga teacher says that the number one, she believes the number one disease in the world is disconnection. And that causes so many different other problems. Disconnection
from yourself, disconnection from others. So that's my passion is one of my passion is connection, connecting people.
Yeah.
Connecting with self, connecting with others, because we've just been completely fragmented, in a capitalist system that is very, very systematically isolated people and got people competing, and you buy your own lawnmower, you don't share. It's just like it's really insidious process.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for everything that you've covered today. I know that I'm pretty sure that we're going to have many more conversations, and there's so many other topics that we could get right into, but I think that was such a beautiful way for people to know who you are and what you're about, and the wealth of knowledge that you can bring to somebody to help enhance their life. I know that you've enhanced mine. I love the chats that we have. How can we get in contact with you?
Well, it's very easy. My new website is Moving for Longevity. So MOVINGFORLONGEVITY. And that's my little logo. Moving for Longevity.com. And so my best way is just email my surname. So my name's going to be up on this recording. So it's just rosanove@gmail.com. So my surname at gmail.com. Always happy for a phone call. So it's 0416 202 802. That's 0416 202 802. But that'll be on my movingforlongevity.com website. And I've also got a Moving for Longevity Facebook group page.
Okay. Do you want to share a link in the group, in the healing community group, and that way if people are interested, they can just join? Yeah,
so I've been dropping a few Facebook lives into the group, which is a lot of fun. So if people are interested, I'll still keep dropping a few more things in.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Namaste, sister.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been awesome. And I look forward to the many more chats that I can feel are going to come.
Oh, look, just before we go, we had a little rave. I'm a Gemini, so I can't help communicating and chatting, but, Tantra and male-female dynamics, relationships, that's because I've just shared my background. That's a really dear to my heart area. So, current toxic relationships between men and women, and me being a middle-aged man towards women, and there's a whole plethora of conversation around that, to really encourage discussions, and that could be a really very interesting discussion forum in your group.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that with you, the masculine and the feminine. I'd love to see your perspectives, what you've seen throughout your life, and I guess how you've worked on different things, different highlights, different situations, perspectives.
Yeah, it shifted very recently. I've done dancing for years, and the same form of 5 rhythms dance, and it's just the last few years there's been this hypervigilance towards middle-aged men that never existed. I did 5-6 years of dancing, and it didn't exist. It's only just come up recently. So there's been a whole shift in this whole self-isolation with the coronavirus. There's really some powerful forces, which I don't know where they're coming from. I'm not a massive left field conspiracy theorist, but there's certainly, we're being worked as a human population, and there's some insidious forces because it's not natural to be in isolation. When you look at the millennia of tribes and indigenous cultures, they're all incredibly connected with the earth. And all this separation is very recent, incredibly recent. So there's something going on that, ideally we need to have a conversation about as a group, as a culture, and saying, look, is this a path that we want to be led down? Because this is alien to our whole DNA. This is not, we're social beings.
We're a herd mammal. We're designed to be together.
There's a fragmentation that's really playing against our whole hunter-gatherer millennium of DNA here that's not healthy, no question.
Yeah, agree.
Great conversation.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thanks again.
All right.
Right. So there'll be a recording on this, on your group for this. So anyone that wants to get that, there'll be a link. I'll place that on.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Okay. Thanks again, Mel.
Thank you very much. All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Gerry. Bye.